In the first hour of his life as Darth Vader, the deal collapsed. Palpatine told him Padme was dead. Killed, the Emperor implied, by Vader's own hand. The promise that had purchased his soul was already a lie. And then he served that man for 19 more years. Star Wars has never quite explained why, until now. The surface answer is the one the canon now states plainly. Vader stayed because Palpatine had dangled a second promise behind the first: the power to bring her back. A 2025 novel called Master of Evil makes this explicit. It sends Vader hunting for a force-wielding shaman who can supposedly raise the dead. And what it reveals is that Vader had begun to doubt Palpatine had ever truly had the power, even in that first hour. He stayed anyway. Because even a 1% chance was enough. This is the answer the films gesture at without ever saying aloud. The Opera House scene where Palpatine first tells the legend of Darth Plagueis the Wise. The promise of cheating death dangled in front of a young husband terrified of a vision.
He had such a knowledge of the dark side, he could even keep the ones he cared about from dying.
That is the hook the entire saga hangs on. Vader did not give himself to the dark side for power. He gave himself for one specific transaction: a life for a life. When the life he was buying was already gone, he should have stopped. He did not. So the resurrection fantasy is the first answer, but it is not enough on its own. Because a man who only wanted his wife back would have, at some point, given up. Vader never gave up, which means something else was holding him in place. The second prison is the one the films barely touch and the comics finally name. In 2017, the writer Charles Soule began a run of Darth Vader comics set in the days immediately after Revenge of the Sith. The fifth issue is the one that matters. Vader travels to a Sith cave to bleed a kyber crystal for his new lightsaber. To make it red. To make it his. And in that cave, in canon, the crystal shows him a vision of the path back. Vader sees a version of himself that turns on Palpatine, that destroys the Emperor, that fulfills the prophecy of the Chosen One. He sees the door out, and he closes it. This is the most important thing Star Wars has put in print about its central villain. Vader was not trapped in the dark side by ignorance. He was not trapped by manipulation. He was offered, in his first hour as a Sith, the path back to the light. He chose to stay. The Obi-Wan Kenobi series in 2022 gave the psychological frame for that choice. Vader, his mask partially broken to reveal one eye, told Obi-Wan that Anakin Skywalker was dead.
You didn't kill Anakin Skywalker. I did.
Vader had killed him. This is the second prison. The cell with no lock. Vader believed he had killed Padme, the hand on her throat, the choice on Mustafar, the fall. To return to the light would mean returning as Anakin. And Anakin, in Vader's mind, was a murderer who had earned his suit. One of the most repeated lines in the canonical literature is that Vader hated himself more than he hated anyone else. More than Obi-Wan, more than Palpatine, more than the Jedi who had failed him. You cannot leave a prison you believe you deserve. So the resurrection fantasy let him keep moving forward, and the self-hatred made sure he never looked back. But there is a third prison, and it is the oldest one. Anakin Skywalker was born a slave. He was taken from his mother by Jedi who offered him a different life, then placed inside an order that told him what he could feel and what he could not. He was a slave to the order, then a slave to a war, then a slave to a chancellor who told him the rules were the chain. And when the chain of the Jedi finally came off, he knelt to a new master inside the same hour. The dark side was sold to him as freedom. It was the same cage with a different name. The suit was the final form of it, a body that could not breathe on its own, a life sustained by the machine of the empire he served. The man who had once raced pods on Tatooine could no longer feel the wind through a glove. He had changed cages.
And the deepest tragedy of the Vader era is that he knew. 3 prisons: the resurrection fantasy, the self-hatred, the slave's chain. For 19 years he hunted Jedi. For 19 years he built fortresses on the planet where his wife died. For 19 years he served a master he had begun to suspect was a liar, because the lie was the only thing keeping the resurrection fantasy alive. And nothing in the galaxy could touch any of them. Until something did.
It could be smugglers, it could
That is the system.
The first time Vader feels Luke in the Force, he does not feel a rebel pilot. He feels a possibility, a piece of Padme that survived. The vision in the cave had shown him the path back, and he had closed the door. The Force, in its own slow way, opened a window instead. Luke Skywalker was the thing Vader's 3 prisons had never accounted for. The resurrection fantasy was about reaching backward. Luke was a piece of Padme reaching forward. The self-hatred said Anakin Skywalker was dead and deserved to stay dead. Luke called him father anyway. The slave's chain said he belonged to Palpatine. Luke offered him something no master had ever offered him in his life. A choice that did not require him to earn it. Consider what Luke does on the second Death Star. He surrenders himself to the Empire. He walks into the throne room of the man who orchestrated the destruction of the Jedi. He tells his father to his face that there is still good in him.
I know there is good in you. The Emperor hasn't driven it from you fully.
Luke had been told what Vader had done. To Padme, to the Jedi, to the galaxy. And Luke had come anyway. He came to his father offering love before his father had earned it. This is the thing Vader's 3 prisons had no defense against. The resurrection fantasy could survive Palpatine's lies. The self-hatred could survive 19 years of mounting evidence. The slave's chain could survive the death of the woman he had sold his soul to save. None of them could survive being loved by someone who knew what he had done. The resurrection fantasy could not survive it. The cell with no lock could not survive it. The slave's chain could not survive it. The scene in the throne room is the entire prequel trilogy resolving on one face that cannot be seen. Vader watches his son being killed by the man Vader gave his soul to, the man whose promise he had served for 19 years, the man who had made him. And for the first time, Vader looks at his master and sees a master, not a savior, not a teacher, not a friend, a slaver. The choice he makes next is not a return to the light. It is something simpler and stranger. It is a father refusing to let one more person he loves die for the deal he made. Vader lifts the Emperor over his head. His back arcs in pain. And the chain that had held him for 19 years finally broke. Not because he became good, because he loved someone more than he hated himself. This is what Star Wars never quite says out loud. The redemption of Darth Vader is not the story of a villain becoming a hero. It is the story of a man who had spent 2 decades convinced he deserved his own punishment, meeting one person who refused to agree. And the man in the suit had spent 2 decades convinced he deserved every second of his own punishment. In that moment, he agreed with someone else's verdict instead of his own. Luke had told him there was still good in him. Vader had not believed it. He had done it anyway. Because if his son believed it, that was enough. The face under the mask at the end is not the face of a man who has been forgiven by the universe. The galaxy has not forgiven him. History will not forgive him. His son has. And for the first time since a vision in a Sith cave 19 years earlier, the door is open, and Vader walks through. Not to undo what he did, not to bring Padme back, not to escape the suit, to die as someone's father instead of someone's weapon. The films will tell you that Luke saved his father. The canon will tell you about resurrection promises and Sith fortresses and visions in caves. But the truest answer to why Vader stayed and why he finally left is the one the saga only whispers.
He stayed because going back required forgiving himself, and he could not. He left because someone forgave him first.
Love won, not over evil, over guilt. And Vader walked through the door. Thank you for watching. When researching this video, we uncovered some genuinely new insights, and I hope you enjoyed learning them as much as I did. May the Force be with you, always.